Welcome to another episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In, recorded on July the 23rd, 2025. I'm your host, Robert Swarthout, and I'm joined by my co-host, Andres Sandate. How's it going, Andres?
Good, Robert. It's good to see you. I'm taking this call this week, or this recording this week on location. This is, I guess you could say, unofficially Alternatives Week in Atlanta. As you know, I serve as the president of the Southeastern Alternative Funds Association. So we have a couple of lunches and some events. So I'm in Buckhead today at a lunch. But it's good to see you. Hope you're good. A lot to talk about.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. We recorded literally a week ago today, and we didn't have this much news after not recording for 3 weeks. But in the last week, it has been fast and heavy. So let's just dive in here so we don't turn this into an hour-long episode. So this first one, a bit of a celebration moment for crypto as an industry. The Genius Act was signed into law by President Trump this last Friday, mid-afternoon. And, you know, it's a lighthearted affair. And, you know, so now the stablecoin bill, the Genius Act, is now law of the land.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, you know, as we roll through some of these topics, this was the first one by design that we selected to talk about. This was, you know, obviously years in the making for the industry. And we have another bill that we're going to talk about next, the Clarity Act. But I guess give me your take. You know, we're a couple of days removed from the passage and the signing. What's your take now that maybe the dust is settling for the industry and overall, like the just the feeling you've gotten being an insider as this thing came together through multiple administrations?
Yeah, you know, it took a long time, right? But once it started moving, it moved quick. They didn't really start working on this thing until mid-spring, and now it's in the books at this point. You know, that's the serious side of it. The joking side of it was during the ceremony when Trump is signing it. You know, the act is called the Genius Act. He's like, they named it after me. I really appreciate that. You know, Trump being Trump. But, you know, jokes aside, you know, it's a small building block. The industry is really waiting for the Clarity Act. That's the one that really matters. If anything, the crypto part, the part of crypto that does more banking, traditional banking type stuff, this was a big deal, the Genius Act. But the Clarity Act is, again, our next topic, but it's also the one that will be the most important because it puts guardrails in place for literally the rest of crypto. Or it has ambitions to. I was reading, and we can kind of segue into it. So the Clarity Act, again, the regulations to the rest of crypto. I was reading just right before we started recording how the draft bill is only 35 pages, which I think in DC terms is basically like a short brief, and it leaves a lot to be desired right now. I think it's a starting point for conversation. Was what I've been reading more so than actually like it's ready to be voted on by any sort of measure. So, but we
so as you we you know, on the Clarity Act, the more the fundamental bill of the two that the industry is excited about and has the most, call it, sweeping and most impactful, you know, most impact on the industry's ability to sort of take the next step, if you will. The vote coming out of the House, though, was, you know, if it's any indication, if, you know, the legislators on Capitol Hill have gotten the message that at least the American public, or if nothing else, the lobby, the crypto lobby is pretty influential. It was not a razor thin vote, right, coming out of the House. I mean, it was 260, 280 or more in favor of the Clarity Act. So a lot of momentum as it moves into the Senate.
Yeah, so the Clarity Act, it was 294 to 134, so largely bipartisan. And the Genius Act only marginally a little bit more. It was 307 to 122. So to kind of, I guess, zoom out a little bit and kind of help the listener understand. So the Senate first voted on the Genius Act, then it went to the House. The House approved it, then the president signed it. Now the House voted on the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, and a third bill. Basically, I forget the name of it, but it's like basically an anti-CBDC bill. It passed all three of those. So now the Clarity Act and the anti-CBDC bill go back to the Senate for them to do their portion of it, assuming they pass one or both of those. Then that would be on, obviously, to the president at that point. I think with a little bit of reconciliation in the process, if needed. So, we're making progress. From a timeline perspective, I've seen that, obviously Congress is, so maybe markup that happens in September, potentially a vote on the Clarity Act in the Senate by late September. So we maybe just be a couple quick months here from having some rules in place for all of crypto, which just seems odd. We've been wanting this for so long and never felt like it was going to come, and it could just be right around the corner. So
Yeah, it's really remarkable when you, like you said, zoom out the progress. It didn't appear we were going to get this far at some point earlier in the year. I never lost hope, but it felt like momentum coming out of the election in November had really petered out, and now it feels like the momentum is back. And obviously crypto has, if you depending on what tokens you follow and what cryptos you're interested in, like it's performed. So there's some tailwinds there and some sentiment. So
exactly,
we'll have more updates in the next several shows for sure as the Clarity Act makes its way through the Senate and back and forth. This third one, though, is also something to take note of, that the SEC approved Bitwise's 10 crypto ETF, the Bitwise 10, I guess, as you call it.
Yeah, and this was a trust that was, for accredited investors. Now they're allowing it to convert into an ETF for all to have access to. And it's not all exactly the top 10 tokens. There's the biggest notable one missing is the Binance coin. I think it's understandable why that has been missing for a long period of time. I wouldn't be surprised if, as they do, quote unquote, rebalancing this thing over time, that Binance ends up making it in, and one of these gets the boot if they're going to keep it at 10. This is the first one that you're going to see. I bet you there's dozens of these things a couple of years from now, right? They're going to be the S&P of 500 of crypto, and then there's going to be, I guess, more niche specific ones. But it's a big day to kind of see this, because this allows the average investor not to have to pick and choose winners, right? Like you start to get to be a little bit more of a passive investor, much like you might be with your S&P 500 ETF you might hold in your
and we talked about on the last show the Vanguard, because of its size and the fact that they are largely an index manager, was one of the biggest owners of MicroStrategy, or now Strategy. So I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see a lot more product development around index products, and the whether it's a retail investor that just wants to get exposure in a more simplified way, or it's institutions that are looking for diversification. Bitwise was early on in creating this Bitwise 10. I remember meeting with Matt Hogan in New York, and as a accredited investor, RIA, we were kind of explaining the strategy, and I thought one day, and this was 3 years ago or so, that seems like it's going to be in a retail friendly ETF wrapper, and here we are. So pretty interesting how it's come together.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about this crypto index is, for the average RIA out there that wants to start offering crypto to their clients as part of their portfolio mix, not having to just buy a Bitcoin or just buy Ethereum and do rebalancing and figuring out the ratios there, they can just kind of farm all that work out to Bitwise in this case, or whatever ETF index comes along, and that client gets exposure. So I think obviously this gives exposure to other assets that currently don't even have ETFs, spot ETFs, which is interesting. So I'd imagine we start to see a bunch of those here in the next couple of months, would be my guess. So let's moving on. The next ones is about Coinbase and PNC, the bank. So I believe PNC is considered super regional, or at least a regional. It's one of those two, but most listeners probably have heard that name before. They have a strategic partnership with Coinbase, so they will be providing banking services to Coinbase. And the other direction, PNC customers will soon have access to within their brokerage accounts to purchase crypto directly. So Coinbase does have like a white label product that's what's going to be used here. This Again, this is another thing. I guess it's almost 8 months now. 8 months ago, this was not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, you have these kind of cool partnerships happening. So, big day in crypto land.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, PNC is by all stretches a super regional. I mean, they I don't know if they fall under the SIFI designation of a systematically important financial institution, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. No offense to PNC, but they're a
Yeah.
large, formerly East Coast bank that's grown substantially since the 2008 financial crisis, as the number of banks in the
Yeah.
country has shrunk. These bigger regional, now super regional, and as I call them, money center banks or national banks have grown in terms of asset size. For them to
Hmm.
move in to you know to put really a pole position. I don't know if this will be one of multiple partnerships that Coinbase is going to strike with traditional banks or traditional financial institutions. But yeah, you have to think that the cross selling and the data sharing, as you mentioned earlier when we were prepping, between Coinbase and a more traditional retail and some
Hmm.
even ultra high net worth customers and everything in between,
Hmm.
pretty substantial. I
Yeah.
feel like individuals are about to get much more educated on crypto products and services here in the next couple of years.
Via the marketing channel.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But
So
we can't stop with just PNC. Our next
yeah.
one is I know you have always found this one, whenever these guys are in the headlines,
Hmm.
JP Morgan in this case, pretty interesting given some of the comments that their chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon uh,
Hmm.
really was not a fan of crypto. Let's just say that, early days.
Early days, but even now, I mean, with what we're about to share, he hasn't said that he's for crypto. I mean, obviously, at some level he is because what I'm about to share, but like he hasn't said a positive statement. So the news here is soon JP Morgan clients will be able to pledge their Bitcoin and Ethereum um, and get borrow money against it. So up until this point, and admittedly, even to today, again, because I haven't heard a positive comment from Jamie, that it's basically a bunch of fraud. It's the people doing nefarious things, all those things. But now they found a way to make money off of it, so it's okay. Um, and I guess we should back up. J.P. Morgan is, I believe, part of the ETFs that are happening. They're not a sponsor, but I believe that they are part of maybe an authorized participant in some cases. So they
Yeah, they help make the market
correct. They're
effectively.
mainly
Make
there
sure that
too. Yeah,
they provide lubricant, oil, whatever you want to call it, liquidity to the that's the analogy I always use, liquidity
yeah.
to ensure proper trading and that there's supply and demand are equalized. Yeah, I mean, look, you like to say this, so it's best, um, I think, and most appropriate in this case, watch what they do, not what they say. And
Hmm.
in this case, we're about to see J.P. Morgan, and we saw in the prior headline with PNC. These are
Yeah.
top, two of the largest banks in the country. We're about to see a lot more of these traditional financial institutions, like furthering, not getting into, because they're already in it, but furthering their reach into crypto, which you just like you said you would not have seen a year ago. um, and so I think the floodgates are going to open.
Yep. Well, so our next topic is the SEC has been talking about they might update how KYC gets done and the regulations around that. And the cool part to me here is not that we're talking about KYC. KYC, I think, is largely a discriminatory framework. It does need revisited, but the way that they're thinking about helping solve some of the problems is using crypto tools, in this case, zero knowledge proofs. This is getting a little geeky here, but we can talk through it real quick. So, what is a zero knowledge proof? Right now, if you want to prove that you live in Georgia and you are 18 years old, you hand someone your driver's license or you hand them your passport. You send them a picture, whatever. So they all of a sudden they know your home address, they know your weight, they know your height, they know some other stuff that admittedly they don't need to know. Um, and you can make the argument that if they just need to know you're 18, they don't really need to know your age outside of are you 18 or not? Yes or no. So zero knowledge proofs are basically an identity that would be on a blockchain. It would be verified, and then say you want to open a PNC account, they could come along and be like, is Andres 18 years old? And the system would return yes or no, not that you're, 40 something years old. Or here's your home address. Here's all the other information. I think it's a great way to kind of bridge the gap of helping keep nefarious people out of the systems, but also not overexpose information for the good guys. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the SEC is clearly looking, to modernize tools. I'm curious if Atkinson was kind of behind this. Clearly, was a project that probably was in the queue of projects that could easily be pursued, depending on who the chair role went to. And seems like there's, if you look ahead a few bullets to his comments around the asset class, like it just further evidence that he's very pro crypto, and we're going to see more of this from him and their that leadership in the years ahead.
Absolutely. This next one, like they've had years to figure this out. So the American Bankers Association has written a letter, I believe, to the Fed or whoever does banking license. It's either the Fed or the OCC, and they're urging them to pause the license approvals for Circle and Ripple because they both have applied for them separately. Again, both crypto companies. This feels like a headline that we might have gotten last year. To see it happening this time, this year seems a little bit odd. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Like, do they get a pause, or what happens? Again, they've had years to figure out that blockchain's coming. Now that blockchain companies want to have a banking license is, in my opinion, not reason for the incumbents to kind of get more time to figure it out. They've had that time.
Yeah. It's I'm sure this isn't the first time that a competitive threat has been met with a
Right.
tactic like this to the banking industry. You have to think that, if you look back to how fintech and payments and other things have moved in, it would seem that the better play would be what PNC is doing, which is like starting to think about partnerships and starting to think about ways that we could align, because I just don't see the community, regional, and even all the way up to the large traditional banks, the four big ones, the Wells, the Cities, the JPs, the B of A's. I don't see them opening up the branches at the scale that they used to open up. I don't see them doing things in their traditional model. They've pulled back dramatically on the lending side and really migrated up market to the largest enterprise customers, and clearly are still in the market for deposits. But their whole business model is, and we do need banks. We do need a healthy banking system. But I think this is sort of a maybe move of desperation more than anything else, because I don't see how we don't see the likes of Circle and Ripple and others. As long as they go through the process legitimately and meet the requirements, I don't see how these companies are singled out for a bank license. If I'm there on their board, I'm thinking strategy and partnership more so than I'm thinking, let's as an industry try to keep them out of the sandbox.
Right, because I don't know. It seems like you're poking not necessarily poking the bear, but it feels like that analogy. If anything, you're irritating the guys that want to come in and try to do something. So maybe you're giving them more fuel to want to battle you. So I know we'll find out here. I would imagine the next month or so whether there's a pause or what happens. So, anyways, so our next topic, a quick thing on the Clarity Act. So basically, how they're going to decide who the regulators are of a token. I'm glad that they are at least appearing to head down a path that will be clear to help answer that. So if a blockchain is decentralized, it's a commodity. The CFTC regulates it. Period. No other questions. What needs to happen is a definition around what decentralized means. That's a very ambiguous term. You're going to get some arguments over that, but I think that they can work through that and come up with a concise answer. If it is not a commodity, then it's a security. The SEC regulates it. So it's kind of like the SEC is not playing the first catch-all, even though it's the second catch-all in this case. So
Yeah, and I mean, it does make things much more simple at the end of the
Mhm.
day, and that has been lacking in this industry for a long
Yeah,
time. So I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
yeah, yeah. So I hope to. I would imagine we don't hear much more about this until September when we start to see more meat put in that bill. Because right now it sounds like it's more bullet points than anything else. So hopefully we can maintain some conciseness. It'd be great to have a concise answer for decentralization, and then go from there. So jumping back to Paul Atkins, so he was on CNBC the other day, and they were talking about wide ranging things. They asked him, "Is Ethereum a security?" He said, "Ethereum is not a security." That was one answer that our friend from the previous administration could not answer, and he refused to, and he would give you every other answer. But in this case, the part that we're, I guess, highlighting here is not only did he answer a question, he also even went as far as to say, referring to the crypto rally that we're currently in, the rally looks set to continue. So, like, he's almost a bit cheerleading here, and to do it on TV in the position he's in was surprising.
Right. Yeah, you're not normally going to see that type of candor from a appointed official. I mean, it's almost Kramerish, right?
Right. I mean,
The-
outside of Trump saying the market goes up because he talks, this is kind of along that same vein a little bit. But yes, it does feel Kramerish for sure. So
yeah, we've kind of moved past the days, though. I think of um, you know, having somebody come on who we all sit there, on our hands and hope that we get a little bit of guidance and direction, only to be, you know, frustrated, I guess was the word, over the
mhm,
last several years, and disappointed that we
right.
couldn't get more straightforward answers
Mhm,
from Gensler. And it felt like we were just always avoiding confronting the more important aspects of the industry, and took the regulation through enforcement approach, would come on TV only when they were announcing a case or an
right.
investigation or something. Not, hey, we're going to come on and talk about how we are trying to promote innovation, promote market participation, promote um, all the things I think that the industry is just serious players in the industry have asked for a long time. So
Mhm,
yeah, he gets his time, Atkins, to to hype, I guess, the industry. I
mhm,
think a lot of people have opinions about the rally. You probably have opinions about the rally we are in. But if you're in his position, you have to think, okay, there there's probably a window through which we can get a lot of this legislation passed. It's harder to do coming on the heels of a FTX. It's harder to
mhm,
do on the heels of a you know a downturn. Now you have a little bit of your wind at your back, and
mhm.
he's being a cheerleader.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, and this might be the maximum, they have until the midterms, right? Like when all of a sudden the mix up and Congress can change and make legislation a lot harder. So anyways, our next topic is about some IPOs, which the SEC does certainly have a hand in. So they're the ones that obviously review these applications. And literally in the last week, we've had two more companies, crypto-related companies, file for IPOs. The first one being BitGo. So they're a big custodian. They are a custodian for a few of the ETFs and a lot of institutional type clients. That's not something that I believe as a consumer that you would interact with directly. And the second one is a smaller firm, but it's a crypto company called Bullish. It's backed by Peter Thiel's VC company, but they have also filed with the SEC for the IPO process. So things, the IPO market is definitely heating up, and crypto, if anything, is revitalizing it for Wall Street bankers because I'm sure they're liking the fees they're getting off all this. So
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty tough few years for those that were looking to access the IPO market. If you were a private equity investor, for example, you could count on there being more M&A activity. The IPO market was a potential path to liquidity. And we saw a lot of stakes in private equity portfolios that were sold. Notably, if you look at some of the Ivy Leagues like Harvard, they've been in the news a lot the last 6 months. Um, selling some of the private equity portfolio, all to say that the capital markets, it's about timing, and is there demand? And right now, the market seemingly is there. There's more demand institutionally and retail for crypto related services, companies, etc. So if you're a banker, you'd have to have your head in the sand. If you're a technology banker, not to be advising
Right.
your clients, to be at least doing the filing. Doesn't mean you're going to ultimately go public, but at least start the
Sure.
process or
Right.
continue the process, so that if the week or 2 or 3 weeks, present itself when you can, execute, you try to do that, and so that's what's going on here.
Yep. Makes sense. So our last topic, this is just more for entertainment purposes. This obviously is not happening, at least in this universe, but in a parallel universe, this would be the comparison had MicroStrategy chosen XRP versus Bitcoin for all their purchases. So somebody went back and did the analysis for every dollar they invest in Bitcoin, had they bought XRP on that date, what would happen? And as of this was late last week, so this math is still probably pretty correct. The Bitcoin holdings for MicroStrategy were valued around $70 billion. I think they're like maybe $72 billion. Had they bought XRP with that same number of dollars over time, it would be worth, I think, 125, 130 billion dollars. So a huge delta. Again, this is all a bunch of jokes here. There's nothing really happening. It just goes to show that maybe there's better investments out there than just straight Bitcoin all the time, 100% of your portfolio. So,
yeah, I mean, it's worth seeing the counterpoint to the the Bitcoin maximalist approach, and knowing that there's a lot more altcoins out there. XRP
mhm,
is just one, and we're not here giving advice. This is not the point of the show, and it's not what we do. It's just
right.
there are a lot of people still who, when you ask them about crypto, they will admit like, oh, I was in that once. And when you
Mhm.
get to know what they were in, it was usually just Bitcoin. And
Bitcoin.
normally it's the end of the conversation. It's like
Yeah.
they're not
Well,
in it anymore because they feel like they missed it. And I feel like the more narrative and the more story and the more ultimately education and awareness they have of the space, the
mhm,
more things that change, like the SEC approving the Bitwise 10 crypto ETF and these laws getting passed to bring it full circle. I go back to, like, I think retail investors, individual investors are about to you know get a lot more marketing messages about crypto, digital assets, etc. For
mhm,
some, it may feel like deja vu, but it's
mhm.
just there's just a lot more out there as
Yeah.
you get exposed than just Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the person that has done crypto one time is largely Bitcoin. They probably are buying it at one of the previous tops. They lost money on it. So that's been their experience of crypto. Just, with anything, it's about timing in life, but or just holding over the long term and staying interested. But yeah, it's we're early days still, but I guess we're slightly less early days than we were when we started this podcast over a year ago. So anyways, I think that's a wrap for today. So thanks for joining us on this episode of the Weekly Crypto Check-In. To stay updated on future episodes, you can find us in any podcast player by searching Teton Crypto Capital or the Weekly Crypto Check-In. Take care.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, trading, or any other advice. The content provided is general in nature and not tailored to any individual's specific circumstances. Always conduct your own due diligence and consult with a professional financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Cryptocurrency trading involves significant risks, including, but not limited to, the potential for loss of all or a portion of your investment, market volatility, and regulatory uncertainty. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on the information discussed herein. Cryptocurrency is not legal tender in many jurisdictions and is subject to market risks. Past performance does not guarantee future results. This podcast does not endorse or guarantee any investment outcomes or results. Use of this podcast implies your acceptance of this disclaimer.